Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hoefs.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to this special edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Brad Hoefs, your host. Our purpose here on Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live a faith-filled, rich, and full life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. Now, this is a special edition. Well, what does that mean? A special edition specifically geared to those of you who'd like to know what's going on in 2019 for Fresh Hope and our ministry. And so I'm going to just share with you a number of things about what's going on and some of our initiatives or some of our goals for the near future. So first of all, we have about 69 groups across the country that are either already fully active or they're in the process of beginning. And we also have them in 25 states and 4 countries. Now, the thing that is important to remember in regards to our Fresh Hope for Mental Health groups, those are kind of our backbone. That's our bread and butter. Those are the groups that we started with and do very well. And Fresh Hope groups are ongoing groups. They're like AA. They are there every week, all the time. And I'm going to tell you that I believe firmly that that's the best way to do it. There are others who offer short-term interventions. And there is research that shows that short-term intervention in any kind of recovery issue works short-term. In other words, people do well afterwards for a period of time, but most people do not assimilate information and change in short-term interventions. Short-term interventions can help people get on the right track, understand the right things, and they would have to really work hard at continuing to implement those things in their lives. And the truth is, people need ongoing support for that. And adults learn best by, if you will, implementing that into their life, absorbing it into their life as they process it in their own time. And so it's impossible to teach a course and call it a group, a curriculum, and call it a group. What you're doing is giving people information and allowing them to talk about it and hopefully assimilate it into their lives. And all the research shows that that's helpful short term. But long-term intervention is what Fresh Hope does in our main groups. And I believe that's the best way to do it. It's harder, but it is by far the best way to do it. Now, that means that you're there when people are having a hard time. And when they're having a hard time, they need the group to be there. If groups take big breaks like over the holidays, how does that help the person who's struggling in the holidays? Suicide rates go up during the holidays. So support group needs to be there. And it's not all that hard to have a continued support group that's always there. People come at their leisure, how they feel led. If they're going through difficulties, they might come back, or they might just continue to come. And if they're doing well, they start becoming leaders and they help in other areas. So that's our bread and butter. That's what we do. We'd like to start many other groups, and we'd love to see hundreds, if not thousands, of Fresh Hope groups across the country. And we're hoping to work with our new regional ambassadors. We have regional ambassadors for different parts of the United States, and hopefully we're going to be coming up with some creative ways to help churches understand and ministries understand how we can help them. And how we can help them is by starting a support group for them and training the facilitators, certifying them, and really setting them on the right course, and then being with them all the time, so to speak, and providing new materials constantly and really encouraging their facilitators. So that's our bread and butter. We continue to want to grow and do better at that all the time. We also want to do better at connecting with our present facilitators. I think we have 130 or 150 some facilitators across the United States, and we want to continue to lift them up and equip them and empower them even more so than what we have already. Now, something new that is really, I would say, still in the pilot phase is we are doing Fresh Hope for teen groups, and those groups work a little differently. There's two groups that actually meet at the same time. One is for the teens and their friends that are their supporters, and then the group for the parents. And the facilitators are for both groups, but they switch back and forth. So there's like 4 facilitators, 2 in one and 2 in the other group, and then they flip back and forth at whatever they determine is the best way to do that. And our teen groups have different tenets, if you will, but still the same idea that it's possible to live well in spite of. And in fact, you could say that's the whole approach to any Fresh Hope group, that it is possible to live well in spite of having whatever it might be, or in spite of going through whatever. Our third initiative that's really at the point of production is Fresh Hope for Living Free. For over 3 years, I've been working in the jail, in the Douglas County Jail here in Omaha, and I have developed a 17-week short-term intervention, that's what it would be called, curriculum that can be repeated over and over and over for people who are in a jail. In other words, in a jail, people come and go. So just for the time they're there, we want to at least introduce them to this. And it's really living free has to do with co-occurring things in our lives, like addictions, maybe a mental health issue, or certainly everybody's got emotional issues. And so we work on the spiritual, the emotional, if there's a mental health issue, including addictions and those kinds of things. And what this is designed to do is for the guys and gals when they're in jail, but then also then to have an ongoing support group on the outside. That would not necessarily repeat the curriculum over and over on the outside. They could, or they could do it once a year and then additional things as the facilitators would see fit, but that the local church then in the area has something for them to go to when they get out, because that's imperative. That it's absolutely necessary. The third thing is that I just finished a book recently, just weeks ago, called Holding to Hope, Staying Sane While Loving Someone with a Mental Illness. And this book, and my wife is also a co-contributor to it, and it will be for the loved ones. And it takes the loved ones through their tenets from Fresh Hope. And in fact, I add the 7th tenet there because we will be introducing a 7th tenet in Fresh Hope groups here in the near future on giving back. And within that book, there's going through the tenets, as well as then there's a whole bunch of chapters like, what do you do when children are involved? What do you tell? What do you not tell? How do you develop trust, for instance, is another section. How do you trust after trust has been broken? What do you do when your loved one is suicidal? Or how do you pay attention to the signs of relapse, et cetera, et cetera? And this will be a book that the loved ones could have as a subgroup of Fresh Hope, or they could do it in the second half of Fresh Hope group meetings when they go to them. But it's a group, or it's a book that can be worked through by people who love someone who has a mental illness. And that book can be used even outside of a Fresh Hope group. Some ministry could just choose to have a group that goes through that book. And I'm hoping, it's in the editing phase now, I'm hoping that, by the end of this year, it'd be great if people could order that as a Christmas present. That may be a little on the aggressive side for getting it done, but either it will be by the end of this year or the beginning of next. which is 2020. Some major initiatives for us this year are, first of all, in 2019, we've begun to translate all of our materials into Spanish. We're able to do this translation of all of our work into Spanish due to a woman in El Salvador named Samantha, as well as a man in Mexico City named Christian. And the two of them really said, hey, we need to get all of this Fresh Hope stuff into Spanish. And so we're working at that, or they're working at it, and we're very excited about that because it's literally millions of lives can be touched even through the Spanish-speaking people in our world, and for those who only speak Spanish. So we're excited about that. That's happening. The other thing is that we're working on a long-term book with a well-known Christian publishing company here in the United States, and just pray for me in regards to that. It will be a book about hope and how to have hope when you're really broken and finding yourself in a very dark spot in life. So I'm working with them on that. We also want to train up hope coaches. We're working on that curriculum. I'm hoping that in 2020, early 2020, we'll be able to introduce that to individuals, churches. This will be, anybody can get trained as a hope coach. And a hope coach will be trained to do two very, very specific things. One is to really understand how hopelessness happens and how hope works, and how to speak that into people's lives. But first and foremost, the second thing that they'll be trained to do, but it's the first thing they'll need to do in any situation, is to learn how to listen well and to understand well. If we're going to help people in hopeless situations, they're in pain. And the way to process pain is not to keep it in, but to talk about it. And so we will be training our hope coaches to ask the right questions, to help people express their pain and process it, but also then how to speak hope into those situations. And it's not just for mental health coaching. It could be for anything. In other words, again, Fresh Hope is really about how to live well in spite of. And part of that is when you're going through difficult times to have hope in spite of how difficult the circumstances might be. And so hope coaches could serve in churches. They could just somebody could take the course and just use it as a friend for other people. It will be something that a church could possibly have 20 people on their staff, so to speak, or 20 volunteers that are available to the pastor, so he could say, Mary's going through this difficult thing, and Eleanor here is a hope coach, and she's kind of been through the same thing. They could connect, and the pastor could connect them. A little bit like Stephen's ministry, but Stephen's ministry is so much deeper and more arduous in the training. This will not be that. But it'll be a hope coach walks alongside of somebody and really helps them and listens and speaks hope into their lives for a certain period of time. Then the long-term project for us is to really get on the straight and narrow with training up and equipping peers to help peers. And I call them hope navigators. I think a hope navigator is somebody who could come along the guys in jail or the women in jail when they get out and can walk from they meet them while they're in jail, or they can meet somebody while they're in the hospital, or they could meet somebody while they're in the homeless shelter, or a doctor could call and say, we need a hope navigator for so-and-so. They meet them, they walk alongside of them as a peer support specialist, but a peer support specialist who has even more training than usual. In other words, these folks would be trained in wellness, they would be trained in hope and how to speak encouragement into people's lives. I'm hoping that we can get that going. That's going to take some significant monies, and it's going to take some significant training. But I really, really believe that Hope Navigators could serve in churches as either part of the paid staff. They could be volunteer staff. They could serve at hospitals. They could serve in all kinds of settings. They could even be at a homeless shelter as a person that helps people transition back into life. They could work as a chaplain or a volunteer teacher at a local jail. And so that's something I really feel strongly about, and I kind of see that on the horizon fairly soon. The other thing that we're really working on right now, and it's the last thing I'll share at this point, is we're really working at learning how and attempting to collaborate with a few other ministries that are like-minded. I've had the opportunity to be in several meetings in Washington, D.C. with the federal government, a division of the federal government, bringing some of us together around the issues of faith and mental health. And in doing so, I've met some other leaders and of ministries that would be like-minded. And we're looking at the possibilities of how to collaborate, how to do some things together, because together we're stronger than we are trying to do it all on our own. So there you have it. That's kind of where we're headed with Fresh Hope, and that's what's going on in Fresh Hope. I hope it's been helpful to you, and please feel free to pass this on to any of the leaders in your church. It might help them to know better. We'd love to encourage you to start a Fresh Hope for Mental Health group, an adult group at your church or in a ministry or a hospital close by. We do ask that all of our groups are sponsored by a ministry or a entity, that a church, for instance, and that they're always held in public places. And but we'll train and certify the facilitators, and it's a pretty easy process in many regards, and doesn't cost much, and we'll even waive the cost for you if you can't afford it. So anyway, those are the things that are going on, and if you're listening to this and you are somebody with lived experience and you're interested in being a Hope coach or a Hope navigator, let us know. We'll put you on the list so that you know when the things come out for it, as well as we'd encourage you to start a group, and we'd encourage you to attend a group if there's one close by, or you can do it online, and all of that information is on our website. By the way, speaking of our website, there is one more thing you might want to know. Here in about 8 weeks, and I'm recording this in 2019, August of 2019, in about 8 weeks, we will be putting out a brand new website, new and improved, we hope. So anyway, there you have it. I want to thank you for listening, and do pass this on to those who might find it helpful. So until the next time, my friend, may He fill you with His hope fresh and new daily. I'm Brad Hoefs, and this has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. The Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast is part of Fresh Hope. Fresh Hope is an international network of Christian mental health peer support groups which empower people to live well in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. Our host, Brad Hoefs, is founder and president of Fresh Hope. He is a pastor who is living well in spite of having bipolar disorder. Brad is the author of the book Fresh Hope for Living Well, which is available at Amazon.com. Brad is also a speaker, blogger, hope coach, and mental health advocate. You can find more out about Brad by going to bradhoefs.com. Hoefs is spelled Hoefs. If you or someone you know is interested in attending a Fresh Hope group meeting, go to freshhope.us and click on Find a Group. Not only do we have local groups, but we also offer Fresh Hope groups online also. If you're interested in starting a Fresh Hope group in your community, email us at info@freshhope.us.